And kind of the theme of the talk is a little bit about, does clothing matter? And apparently it does, because when we start to talk about it, it draws some of the most defensive reactions you're ever going to see. And you get some very snarky, sarcastic, defensive, venomous type of reactions. And so I guess it does matter to people. People kind of do take it personally. And so it's going to be about modesty and dress. And I'm going to talk about, I'll bring in as one of my sources, I'm going to give you the exact, what it is exactly in a minute. But it's this Romans 10:17 priest, very good priest. And that's the name of his website. And he gave the sermon at his church parish on this. And he laid out some very good things I hadn't heard put it that way before. But one of the things he said, he was like, we're all sinners, we're all weak. You know, and we have our particular weaknesses. And normally for the men it's purity, and for the women it's modesty. So it's not that we're pointing fingers at anybody, that some are worse than it. We're all sinners. And so point being is that I talked to the guys a few weeks ago about purity. And so while we have the ladies here, we're going to talk about modesty. Now, and look, ladies, I'm with you. I understand certain modes of dress being more comfortable or less comfortable than others. I'm dressed like this almost all the time. Almost all the time. And there's a reason. You know, it's dignity, it's impression. It makes a difference. It does matter. And I might not sit at my desk all day with my coat, but I'll almost always have a shirt tie on, no matter what I'm doing. And even in my own profession, it's getting to be a little bit more rare. You know, and incidentally or coincidentally, we get an email every day from our National Society of CPAs, and one of them this week, the subject line was, when will CPAs start wearing shorts to the office? So, they have their casual days and all that. I've never participated in them. But that's just the trend of our whole culture, is just more and more casual. So I'm with you, and even all summer long like this, all summer long in the heat of Louisiana. We're called to be different. St. Paul said, do not conform. Okay, do not conform. So Catholics are called to be different. It's a bit of an old topic, I know, but I want to take a new approach with it this evening, because we were always, we talked about this umpteen times in amongst this group, whether it be here or the school. And it was always us teaching our little kids. But what's happening now is that our bigger kids are going out. And they're getting questioned, and they're getting asked, and they're getting challenged. And they have to answer those challenges. They have to give their reasons. So what I want to do this evening is first start off with the background, the backdrop of where this is all coming from and why. And then some of the common challenges we get, and then how to answer them. And then finally some things that can aid people that are trying to learn this new mode of dress and new kind of apparel that they may be coming into. And as he said, as the priest had said, we each have our weaknesses, and we're in this together. We just need to help each other out with this. And so, no offense to anybody. And if you do feel the need to throw something, whatever, just holler at me first. Give me be that courteous to give me a chance to get out of the way. So, but anyway, I'll keep it real light. So we're going to start off with a bit of the backdrop and the sources. Again, Romans 10:17. He points out in those weaknesses that it's as old as the Garden of Eden. Okay? Two people in the Garden of Eden. One offers the fruit, and the other takes the fruit. So that's pretty much what we have going on here as far as modesty and dresses goes. And both are equally guilty One isn't more responsible than the other. Equal responsibility, equal guilt in the sin. Okay? Scandal. Scandal isn't to necessarily shock somebody as for the theological term. Scandal is to cause someone else to sin. And when someone causes someone else to sin, they are equally guilty of that sin. Even if the other party doesn't commit the sin. If they tempt them, they are just as guilty. You'll recall if you scandalize one of these little ones in the millstone, that particular passage there, that's where that comes from. So the whole point is, let's help each other out. And that's what we're trying to do here. And I talked to her earlier about both the weaknesses, men with purity, women with modesty. And the nice thing is that the church, in her motherliness, gives us some help, gives us some guidelines that are going to help us out so that we can all stay in a state of grace, remain holy, and stay out of trouble. On from there to Christ himself. And with regard to this, he's given the Sermon on the Mount, right? In Matthew chapter 5. And then after the Sermon on the Mount, he goes on and he talks about various issues of different sins or how to conduct ourselves. And he gets on the one of adultery. So he says, "But I say to you, everyone, meaning man, who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Matthew 5, verse 28. Again, equal responsibility. It takes two to tango. There was, in that passage I just read, there was a man and a woman. Okay, it wasn't just a man. Okay, so both equally responsible. Today, unfortunately, many Catholic women want to assume they were not in that passage. Therefore not take responsibility and say, well, it's his fault if he does the looking. Again, let's help each other out. That's the whole point. Next is the catechism. Now, the current catechism of the Catholic Church came out in the 90s. Addresses the topic, and it's in the 2500 series, paragraph 2521. I'm not going to read it all, just the pertinent parts. Purity requires modesty, an integral part of temperance. Modesty protects the intimate center of the person. It means refusing to unveil what should remain hidden. It is ordered to chastity, to whose sensitivity it bears. There's more to that paragraph. I'm going to skip to the end of the next paragraph, 2522. Modesty is decency. It inspires one's choice of clothing. It keeps silent or reserved where there is evident risk of unhealthy curiosity. It is discreet. One thing you're going to notice right away about that particular guidance or teaching is that it's extremely vague. It leaves us a lot to interpret and to figure out on our own. So, with Catholic teaching, we must remember that whenever we see something, we always have to look at it. Whenever we see official teaching, we always have to look at it through the lens of what has previously been taught. It's not that it's because the church can never teach new morality or theology. Okay, it's always going to be reflective of what was always there before. Moral teaching does not change. So we can and do and can find some very particular detailed standards and guidelines that the church has given us. It's a code, and dress code. And there's a few places, I'm not going to go through it in detail, just for time's sake and other considerations. The best source I could say would be Dressing with Dignity by Colleen Hammond. Why? Because it pulls out all this stuff all together in one spot. What all the popes and saints have said over the centuries, and not over the centuries, recent, very recent. It's only maybe a few decades old. So, but it's the best thing we have to go on. 152 pages, easy read, very easy to understand, straightforward and clear. That's too much for you. We have the executive summary one-pager at a website called fixthefamily.com. go to the About menu and you drop down to Family Fundamentals, at the bottom half of that page, you're going to find Modesty and Attire. I put it there because whenever we talk about this, we get a lot of questions as to where that's coming from. So I condensed it, put it all in one spot, and gave the sources of where it originated. Okay, because some of the sites that it was on, people had questions about, and I don't want to be responsible for other people's sites. So it's on ours, it's there, we document, we give the sources, and we give credit where it's due to where it's coming from. That's too hard. There's an audio. Romans 10:17, I think it's a .org. If you type in the search box, Modesty, there's only a few of those sermons that will come up. It's called Modesty, the Virtue That Guards Purity. So there we go, modesty and purity together. This is a priest I've never seen before, never heard of until a few months ago. Uses the exact same standards we in this group have always known. It's universal. Okay, why? Because human nature is the same everywhere. You know, we're all made in the same way. Okay, so very good sermon, and he balances things out really well. Now let's move on to how do we reply to some of these questions. People are going to see differences and they're going to question. So we have to answer. First of all, we have to take from the standpoint of that, in all likelihood, if they're questioning, they've never heard this before. Okay, they might be Catholic, going to Catholic church every Sunday their whole life, and have never heard it before. So it's it was one of the works of mercy to educate, right? To instruct. So that's the approach we need to take. We have a chance to share, to educate, to inform. It's not that we're necessarily pushing on to others, although it is something good to share, but a lot of times, again, people are going to question. This is why I recommend having Dressing with Dignity. I think all Catholic families should have it, should have extra copies on hand to give out or to offer to people, or at least to know about it so that they can get it themselves. And what I would say to do, instead of trying to explain it ourselves, because again, for some reason it is a kind of a touchy subject, give them the book. You know, especially for somebody who's wanting to know justifiable church teaching. Give them the book and say, you know, this is, if it's a young lady, this is why I dress the way I do. If it's a young man, this is why I'm respectful of ladies, because I understand this. And just plant the seed. Just plant, you know, and let them go with it, let them go home with it, let them see it for themselves. And remember how you came to it. Common responses are rejections that we're going to see. And it's amazing. It is. We're getting this from all sides right now. That's why I wanted to talk about it. Y'all probably are too. But it's coming from every direction. Even if you just go out to a race and this, a lady you never talked to about, talks to my wife about it. But it's amazing the consistent responses or rejections that people have. Let's say, well, you're judging me. Or, you think I'm a sinner because I don't dress the way, it says in that book. It's like, well, as we said just before, we're all sinners, and that's why we have the guidelines. That's why it's necessary. And it doesn't really matter if anybody else judges you. You don't have to worry about if anybody else judges. What you got to worry about is that God judges, and it's in that book, and that's the guidance that He's giving. Or here's another one. You're trying to control me. It's like, well, again, that is some feminist code. We need to learn, and I've talked to a lot of people and I've had many discussions, and so I start to see a consistency in these kind of responses. And again, when you hear that one, that's meant to put us off, because what's happening there is that they're trying to avoid what is being presented to them and trying to find a fault in you. Okay, so it's a distraction. And it's really prideful and self-centered to think that someone making a general statement is assume that it's directed toward them, because it's all in the book. It wasn't a letter written to you saying you need to dress this way. Here's one of the most important things about having that book or listening to the sermon or whatever, is that it's as a priest said, I'm in sales. You got to ask management. You see, it's not. I didn't write it. I didn't create it. I didn't decide. I didn't sit down and think about this is what all the guidelines should be. It didn't come from a particular school group, or it didn't come from a particular church parish, or from a certain family. It's coming from the church. So that's important for them to understand. I guess why some people have a hard time with it. Colleen Hammond authored a book. She didn't make up those standards. She just pulled them together all in one spot. And you have the common term, and when they have that kind of defensiveness or rejection, you remember the whole concept of kill the messenger. Look at St. John the Baptist. He was bringing out some moral teaching, and his head ended up on a platter. We listen on and on, about lines and lines of martyrs, and just living and teaching and preaching the truth, being charitable to people, to give them the truth. Our Lord here, crucified. The Word coming from the mind of God communicated the truth and was rejected. So that's what's going on here. It's not anything that you're necessarily doing wrong, but it's almost to be expected. So apparently clothing does matter to people. And, the common response there is, which wear doesn't matter. Well, apparently it does. Another technique is to try to seek to discredit you. So they'll do something like showing that it's not practiced or enforced anywhere in the church, or they'll find somebody, especially somebody in a place of authority, who's going to disagree with it. And all we have to do in response to that is say, well, look at all the other things that the church or some people in church aren't enforcing. Does that make them no longer applicable or no longer valid? Contraception, divorce and remarriage, and going to communion after being divorced and remarried. So the response there is, like I said, it's not my standards, it's not my family's. Didn't make them up. We just decided, once given the information, once our ignorance was enlightened, we said, oh wow, that's what we got to do. We decided to be obedient to the teaching authority of the church. Again, the church is trying to help us out here. We should comply. And if not, why not? And it doesn't matter, if I'm judging you or he's judging, anybody else is judging you, until it's somebody who's under your authority. And for a married man, that's his wife and daughters. For a parish priest, that's the people in his congregation. So if they're under your charge, then it matters if he's judging, or if that is the case. And it's not the same thing like just a matter of preference, where somebody, I think you should wear purple, but you're wearing yellow. It's very meaningful and outright reason code that's there. And then look at the results of those who are not practicing them. Are they respected? How are they viewed? And what kind of treatment do they get? And most people won't give out the information just because of this reaction. They're scared of this happening to them. Is that charitable? Not to give out the information. Here's the golden nugget, though. What really we need to take home and tell our older kids. Okay, this is, if you get anything tonight, this is what I think is most important. Is that if you don't follow the guidelines, and you read the catechism being vague, and you say, well, these are the standards that I think are modest. These are the standards we can practice in modesty. What can happen is that your own child, when they get older, they could say, well, Mom and Dad, that's great that you decided those were your standards, but I'm going to figure out some for mine on my own. And these Catholics over here, they're saying they're modest, and so I'm going to dress like them. Okay? Whenever you get subjective, and that's, it can easily be changed. Whereas when you have some guidelines, you know what you got to stick to no matter how the fashions change or whatever. There's some guidelines for each that won't change. And look, it's virtuous. Being uncomfortable, far from mortification. It's okay. It's okay. It's a good Catholic thing to do. So how do we do this? If you meet with somebody and they are new to it, because look, when we were first married, we had no clue of this, and Missy had to learn, and then we taught our daughters and all. But it was a learning curve for us too, and it's a gradual process. A few things I've heard is like a mentor is key in just some of the practical things. I guess with the mode of dress, there's just some practical things that in different situations that people need to know. So it's great to have a mentor. A lot of times it will be, a sister of somebody or, something like that. So that's one thing. The other thing is environment. Environment is key. The people you associate with. It's a whole lot easier when the people you associate with are doing it. When you're the oddball, it's a lot more difficult. So hang with the people that are carrying the standard. Okay, so that's it. Old topic, bit of a new twist, new approach, but we're all sinners. We're weak. The church has given us these standards to help us in our effort toward staying out of trouble, basically, and remain in a state of grace. And we just need to help each other out. God bless you.